Hello and welcome to Whispers Reddit. We're thrilled to have you join our cozy corner where we dive into the most intriguing, heartwarming, and sometimes mysterious stories from Reddit. Whether you're here to unwind, get inspired, or simply enjoy a good story, you've come to the right place. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a whisper. Grab a comfortable seat, relax, and let's embark on this storytelling journey together. Thank you for being part of our community. Let's get started. After 20 years of love, I discovered my wife cheating, so I confronted her with a fair partner and ended their marriage. There were several signs, but I didn't notice them. She started sending odd late-night texts and frequently went out for drinks with her friends. I was glad she was being friendly, even though this was not her usual behavior. She went to yoga once a week, but it seems she wasn't paid because she helped with setup and cleanup, and the instructor was one of her co-workers in. Although we received a lot of spam calls, which were usually from telemarketers or debt collectors trying to find the number's previous owner, she was also, in my opinion, fairly rigid for someone who practiced yoga. If we were near each other's phones, we would frequently answer them. However, she had an unknown caller on multiple occasions who would end the conversation as soon as I responded. I was not expected to return until tonight because I work out of town tomorrow. I returned home yesterday afternoon from a 2E road trip because work was slow because we've been so busy this summer with family and friends. The trip was supposed to give us some alone time, but I didn't recognize the truck in my driveway. My neighbor asked me recently what I thought of the new truck, but I assumed he was wrong and didn't think much about it. I had a terrible instinct as soon as I saw the truck, and even though I loved and trusted my wife, I crept to the window of our house before I could. I spent the night in my family's cabin and drank everything there. I was going to confront her on my way home today, but I changed my mind because I'm not prepared. Anger is all I can feel, and violence is all I can think about. The bedroom on the side of the house was open, and as I got closer, I could hear them. My worst suspicion was confirmed when I looked out the window on my bed and they were straight there nude. I turned to leave. I've been fighting the urge to do something I'll regret right now, and I'm having a hard time caring what happens to me. I'm back at the cabin now, and I've spent the last hour staring at a 60 bottle of rum. I don't want to get wasted and make bad decisions, but I do want to get wasted and forget this. I know that this is a crucial moment in my life, and that what I do in the days ahead will determine how I live the rest of my days there. I need help, so I'm contacting strangers because I'm not ready to talk to friends or family. F this planet edit. Time, but I have decided not to eat it. My brother is on his way and should arrive in a few hours based on the phone call I made, and my wife just texted me to express her love for me and her excitement for our trip. I haven't responded yet, but in addition to my brief update, I wanted to address some comments and questions that kept coming up. I feel much better today if you can tell, and the pain has almost completely gone away, even though I still feel like I've been hit in the stomach. I've begun to look forward to the future. I've included some cliff notes to help clarify the questions and comments I've received. I don't think this is accurate. Am I just very resilient? Or is this a sign of things to come? When I said wife and best friend, I meant the dual roles my wife and I had in our relationship. I didn't even know the other guy, much less consider him my best friend. I didn't get a good look at him, but based on my brief impression and the fact that I saw his car, I don't think it's someone. I know we don't have children, but we plan to. We just sold our house, and when the new owners move in September, we want to move closer to my workplace, just like he did for me. I will subtly thank my neighbor for helping me after a long work trip, and I truly apologize for what happened to you. For us, we're just getting started, so take a seat and let's begin with the first update. My brother and I had a long talk when he arrived, and he has been my best friend ever since. He truly sets the standard for what true friendship is, and I've learned that I should never forget that. He will always support me without passing judgment, just as I would support him, even though we occasionally argue. I decided to respond to my wife's text last night because I was supposed to be at home, and it made sense for me to just be texting her because we are not allowed to have phones on the property. She knows that I could easily slip in a few texts, so I told her in writing that I would not be able to call. I rented a romantic bed and breakfast on the vineyard, and she said she could bring her best friend over this weekend. I knew she didn't want me to think that her best friend would be attending because it was non-refundable, so I told her that I had already given it to my brother and his wife who would reimburse me in a month. I told her that I would reschedule after canceling all of the reservations because I had to travel to one of my company's remote locations. With the exception of the romantic one, I have a reservation this morning with my brother. Fortunately, the hotel let us switch from the honeymoon suite to a 2-bedroom, so we ended up going on a long overdue fishing excursion because there is a really nice lake and boat rentals nearby. Since I am free this weekend, it eased my anxiety and gave me more time to think because I won't have to write or talk to her for a few days. At this point, I'm thinking of getting a divorce because there isn't really any other option for. In order to at least prepare for what I believe is inevitable, I am also beginning to speak with lawyers and take a lot of advice from this place. My brother is in favor of this, but he has asked me to speak with someone for a few weeks. On Monday, his wife is willing to speak with me through a friend of hers who works as a couples counselor. At the very least, it might help me sort out some of this confusion, but I don't see it changing my mind. Although it was a brief update, it gives us a glimpse into the ops' current thoughts. Let's move on to the next update, which is quite extensive and contains a wealth of information. The past few days have seen a lot of events, such as my brother Matt and I driving for more than 5 hours to attend the Tibetan breakfast on the vineyard. I am really grateful that he has supported me during this time, as it helped me get my thoughts straight. The B&B's owner gave us some food after we both caught a few trout that we had to release due to their size, but our fishing trip wasn't very successful. On Sunday, we drove back to Matt's house, which is about an hour away from my house in the town next door. Jen, Matt's wife, was waiting for us when we arrived, and we all sat and opened a bottle of white wine that was kept in the cooler for me. Jen then told me that the weekend was officially over. She decided to spy on my wife while we were overseas. She told me that the man stayed at my house all night on Friday, but she got there on Saturday morning just as he was leaving. She had followed him home on Saturday night and found the apartment where he lived while texting me to express how much she loved and missed me. Jen said she was splitting her time between stalking my wife and visiting relatives in my town. She said she caught my wife on Sunday morning as she was leaving his house. She took a few pictures of them kissing and cuddling before she got into her car, but I'd rather not see them because that basically sealed the deal. If she can go from telling me she loves me to being with another guy so quickly, I doubt I could ever trust her again, but I decided that I wouldn't react hastily because I need to keep my cool. Jen then told me that Sharon would be joining us for dinner. To be clear, Jen scheduled an appointment for me to see a psychotherapist named Sharon. I enjoy blogging on Reddit for the same reason. This was my first time meeting my wife, who had never met her before. We got along well, and after dinner, Sharon and I took the dogs for a walk around Matt's neighborhood while also having a brief private conversation. Sharon was very helpful because she listened well and gave me the impression that I didn't need to be cautious. Being that open about how I felt was therapeutic, even though I get along well with my brother. The only helpful advice Sharon gave me during our hour-long walk was to not put off talking to my wife because the longer I wait, the harder it will be to discuss this with her. She explained that at the moment, I need clarity more than anything else, and my wife is the only one who can provide it. Janet and Matt invited me to stay with them for as long as I need to, and later that evening, I spoke with my manager, who was able to make arrangements for me to live in corporate. Since I know that Matt and I have a time limit on how long we can live together, even though I had to leave on days off, I had been staying there every other week for a while. If necessary, he was able to make arrangements for me to stay there full-time for a few months. Later that week, I decided to reschedule my first session with Sharon because I thought that talking would be sufficient, and she agreed. I spent the entire Sunday night trying to figure out how to proceed, which was challenging because even the hypothetical scenario in my head made me feel depressed or angry. I decided to wing it normally because I do well under pressure. I woke up the next morning and said goodbye to Matt and Jen. What if he's there when I get home? I asked myself as I drove home, then thought that it would probably only make me feel even more irate than I had been a few days earlier. I decided to start with a drive-a-bee because my wife's car and his truck weren't there. After gathering a number of necessities and items I didn't want to part with, I went to the man's. Since I don't trust her right now, I decided to write her to ask where she was. Her truck was there, but so was her car. I decided to write, "I'm getting groceries," and she replied, "I drove past the grocery shop and verified she was there." I felt terrible about admitting that, but it's the only way I can be sure of anything, and it breaks my trust. We need to talk about it, so I called her again and begged her to just come home. What's wrong? She wrote back, "I must be prepared." She came over to kiss and embrace me when she got home as usual, and I turned my back on her. She repeated what was wrong to me, so I told her to start telling the truth. She didn't seem to understand, so I said, "Okay, if you can't be honest, then I'm leaving." At this point, she became agitated and asked, "Are you talking about yoga?" I assumed that was a beginning, and she told me that she hadn't been going. When I asked her what she was talking about, I asked, "Where are you going if you weren't going to yoga?" She said that she had been taking walks to decompress because she had been so worried lately. I asked, "What has been causing you so much stress and why did you feel the need to lie to me about what you were doing?" She said she didn't know how to tell me and blamed it on the transfer preparations. I wanted to know why you chose to lie, so I pressed ing. When she said she didn't mean to lie and that she was worried she would be making me feel more stressed, I replied that I wasn't stressed. She didn't seem to be telling me everything, so I looked at her in amazement and said, "I think you're lying about more than just skipping yoga." I looked at her and said, "But if you keep lying, This won't work because you have already lied to me. Oh, are you talking about last weekend when I went out for drinks with some friends and returned home late? She followed up on her attempt to divert attention by saying she was at a loss for words. I sensed something that disturbed you, and I didn't know she went out late or had drinks. I asked her if she was lying again, or if this was what she had done while I was at work a few hours away. She clarified that even though she had gone out for drinks that evening, she didn't run into her alleged best friend. I asked, "Who did you see?" And she replied, "I just drank alone." Naturally, I wasn't buying this, and I was getting. I asked her impatiently, "Is that something now that you are drinking by yourself?" "Maybe I have a problem," to which she replied, "I don't know what else to say." She said she had one last chance to be honest before I left, so I told her to get to the bottom of her drinking problem, and after looking at me, I just got up and left. I usually take a drive to avoid her when we argue, so she probably thought this was the same, but then she noticed that I had taken my Xbox clothes and toiletries, so she began. I blew up my phone at that point, so I told her because I gave her a chance to be honest, and she didn't. Instead, she begged me to come home so we could talk about things in person. She said she didn't know what she thought she had done or why I was so unhappy, and she reaffirmed her love for me and her promise to never hurt me. Hearing her say that the words were always comforting, and I believed them without question, gave me a new ache in my chest. In the worst way possible, I hung up because I couldn't take it any longer before I was ready to reply again. She called back about 40 times, asking if I had spoken to Karen, my best friend. This time, she said, "Come home, I don't want to say this over the phone." When I asked why, she said, "Come home," which lowered my heart rate. I then drove home, assuming you had spoken to Karen, and she continued to tell me about how they had gone out for drinks a few weeks prior while I was at work, but I just looked at her when some men started buying them drinks, so they just went along with it. One of the men tried to kiss her as they were leaving, but she quickly backed off and told them she was married. She then said she was sorry and wanted to tell me, but she was a fool and decided to keep it a secret from me. She also told me that after hooking up with the other guy, Karen gave his friend my wife's number without asking, and he has texted her a few times since, but she has never replied in writing. She asked me to show me her phone, and she did. Other than her mother and me, there were no texts at all, which was new to her because she never erases her texts. When I looked through the deleted photos, I found one of a guy I didn't recognize, even though her photos were clean. She told me it was the man who tried to kiss her. When I asked her again, "Why did you take a picture of him?" she blamed herself again, saying that I was being foolish. I pointed out that this isn't a good excuse. I refused to let her get away with it, so I pressed her again to explain what she had done. She said she didn't know, but I asked, "Is that all you want to tell me, or is there more?" She said, "I went out again, I didn't want to face any more hints of the truth, and I got into my truck and left." She tried to stop me as she hurried out, but I was already out of her grasp after eating lunch and trying to think of what to do next. I asked, growing tired of the whole situation. Went to the nearby park and just sat on my tailgate. While I was there, I began to remember other things I should have known better, such as the times I worked a weekend shift and went to bed early with some of her girlfriends. For example, when I woke up at 4 in the morning, I tried calling my wife multiple times, but no one answered, so she called me back about 30 minutes later to ask if I could come get her. When I picked her up, she told me that they had failed in their attempt to call a cab. Before offering them a ride, Buddy was approached by 2 men who wanted to stop at her house. After they got to his house, according to my wife, Buddy went into a room with one of the guys. After a while, she gave up and waited with the other roommates in the kitchen while drinking. When I tried to call her, she claimed she didn't hear her phone. We got into a fight over this, and she ended her friendship with her friend because she was disgusted by what they had done. I thought that was the end of it. Made the trip to another city to visit a close friend. A planned girls' night was held, and 4 of the girls were in their pajamas watching movies while intoxicated, or so I was told. She then gave me a good night call at around 1 in the morning. During our 20 minutes of conversation, she kept telling me that they were having a nice girls' night, and then I heard a man's voice in the distance. She first denied hearing anything, but when I asked who it was, it happened loudly once more. "Oh, ex-friend took a couple of." After remembering all of those things and our conversations about them, I was ready to try this one last time when my phone rang almost immediately after I turned it back on. She said, "I can't deny it, everyone in this place is furious about it." She was 3 hours away and intoxicated, so she forced me to trust her once more. We also talked about her refusal to tell me of their presence and her vow never to put herself in such a predicament again, which obviously didn't stick. I replied that I drove home, and as soon as I got inside, she started sobbing uncontrollably. She kept saying, I'm so sorry," as she sat on the couch. When I asked her what she was sorry for, she began to rock wildly back and forth, and after it took her a good 5 minutes to gather her courage to speak, she admitted to lying about the man who tried to kiss her. I asked her to explain what had happened, and after glancing at her, she said that night, the four of them went back to his house and played. Even though I knew there was more, I felt dizzy just listening to her say it. It felt like a million people were talking into my ears at once, and the room seemed to be getting smaller. I thought I was having a panic attack, so I went to the bathroom and washed my face with cold water. What exactly did you do? I asked her again, and even though she tried to avoid it, she said that she gave him her head after he touched her. Was that it? Asked her if she knew it wasn't all of it, and she replied that it was. I became enraged and told her that I would no longer play the trickle-truth game and that we would either stop talking or she would have to tell me everything at once. She took a few more minutes to talk before she broke down again and confessed that they had another encounter and that they had shared a bed. She immediately said, "I'm so sorry, I will stop at nothing to make up for this because I love you." After a pause, she continued, "Please give her a chance to do everything she can to make up for it." I promised to think about it, and now the whole truth came out. She admitted that they had been having sex while I was out of town for work and that it had been an affair for more than a month. She also told me that he is married and that their divorce is imminent. "Does he know you're married?" I asked yes, to which she replied, "Do you think our marriage is failing if he was having an affair because his is failing?" I asked, "No, I don't." When I asked her what would fix this for me if you were in my shoes or the shoes of your affair partner's wife, she replied that it would be resolved if she knew the truth and could believe that I meant what I was saying. Then she said, "I'm trustworthy, I made a mistake and will not do it again." I asked, "I'm so dumb, I despise myself, don't leave me please, I can make this right, how would you do that?" "You were his wife," I asked, and she said yes. Then I said, "Fix this." She asked, "Do you want me to call his wife?" And gave me a look if you think that's what she would want. I said, "I tried calling, but never got a response." A few minutes later, Karen Work was listed as the name, and I knew it wasn't Karen because of the shocked look on her face. I asked, "Oh, I must have the wrong number," and he responded, "Oh, I must have the wrong number. You have been having an affair with me," so I said, "She has something to tell you, so I'm going to let you talk to her." She says she told him the whole truth, saying that he should never contact her again and that they were only having a brief affair. She then hung up and asked him, "What divorce lawyer are you using?" I demanded to see the phone, saying, "I'm not getting divorced forced." He replied, "Why did you tell my wife you were?" I asked him, "I didn't," and then asked me to speak to his wife. He said, "I didn't realize she was married. Don't let a mistake destroy my marriage. You ruined mine over a mistake." I shot back, "It's only right that I inform his spouse since she was at work." He begged me not to tell her, promising to tell her everything when she got home. I hung up after saying, "All right, you do that." I then turned to my wife and asked her if she knew his wife's name and place of employment. She did, and I asked her if she knew. She was able to get her on the phone and told her to sit down. This woman said she would call my wife back from her car as she was ready to leave for the day. The first thing she asked was, "What's going on?" My wife told her that she didn't want to cause any accidents and that she had a terrible thing to tell her, so please don't drive. Ed, the wife, was clearly alarmed and asked where her affair companion was. My wife told her that he was in their apartment and doing well at the moment. After a minute or so of silence, the affair partner's wife said she would find out who my wife was. If this was some sick joke, she hung up. Karen Work then texted my wife less than 10 minutes later, saying, "Thanks, you just ruined my life." I picked up the phone and replied, "You just destroyed 2 marriages and 4 lives, remember that." The wife continued, "I just wanted to let you know that we have been having an affair for the past month since I'm currently coming clean to my husband." My wife begged me to stay with her for the next hour, promising me sexual favors, counseling, and the assurance that she would always be by my side. Based on the comments, this was exactly what I expected, and as a reward, she suggested that we go on that trip. She said that we needed time away because our work schedule had been separating us lately, so we needed to get together and spend some quality time. I went, just as I thought she would say, but she wasn't expecting me to tell her. When I told her all of that, she sobbed on the floor and started to complain that she didn't deserve to live. She told me to end our relationship right away because she is too terrible to be with anyone else. This went on for a while, and I listened to her excuses for 4 days. She wasn't ready for me to tell her that I already had a counseling appointment scheduled, and she most definitely didn't expect me to tell her that I had slept with her in my own bed. She tried to give me a hug, a cuddle, or even a head if I would just stay and work things out with her for hours on end. When I finally called Karen, I told her that her unfaithful friend was suicidal and asked her to come watch her. I left after that, and I haven't spoken to her since that incident, which happened about a full day ago. She has been calling and texting me all day long, and her friends and family have been calling and texting me all day long, each with a different excuse or expression of sympathy. I had my first good cry since this whole thing began when I read it. Her father was the only one to write to me, and he assured me that he would always love me like a son no matter what and that I should act in my own best interests. My counselor Sharon and I have appointments tomorrow and Thursday respectively, but I'm not sure of everything until it happens. I think I know where this is going. I apologize for the lengthy story, but it's just a good way to get things out. Thank you. We have one last update regarding this story, and before I offer my commentary, I can only say that I think the op did a fantastic job of persuading his unfaithful wife to tell the truth. Final update, well done he. Let's move on to the last update. Thanks to the letters and comments, I feel so much less damaged and more hopeful because of the people who are sharing their own tales like this. I truly appreciate all of your words and actions on my behalf. Since I want to be as discreet as possible, I only stay between my brother's house and camp on nights when I have an early appointment. I've benefited greatly from my employer allowing me to take a few weeks off for personal reasons, and I've continued to see Sharon, the therapist, 3 times so far. I feel better now than I did a week ago, so even though I don't think our visits are very fruitful, I do think they're a nice opportunity for me to get some things off my mind, so I will continue for the time being. Since we both have our paychecks deposited into our own accounts, I spoke with a lawyer last Thursday and with their help, I created a list of all of our assets and financial information, including debt. I then went to the bank and asked them to put a stop on our account so that no one could take money out of it without the other person present. This won't stop us from getting new money, just the old shared money, but it's too late. The lawyer did advise me to wait to confront her. Prior to serving her the papers, I received almost constant calls and texts from my wife, her family, and her friends. This past weekend, my sister-in-law threw a family get-together at the cabin, and I had to inform my family of the situation. Now that it's public knowledge, I can include them in my recovery process. Until around 8 o'clock on Saturday night, everything was going as smoothly as possible until my wife's car arrived, and my dad, brother, and I were gathered around the fire. Assured me that he would take care of everything so that he wouldn't be seen from the driveway. My dad and I decided to take a walk around the property, and as we were about to enter the woodland, I heard my wife telling my brother to get off the path. She was with some of her friends, who were also shouting at Matt and telling him to stop talking. He did his best, but they were too much for him, so she shoved past him and ran toward us. She must have seen us heading that way. I said I would. My wife, who I'll just call Kate, came running to me and began crying even though my dad offered to handle her. I didn't stop her from giving her a hug right away, but I also didn't give her one in return. She begged me to just talk to her, so I agreed, and we went for a walk around the property's trails to have some peace. According to Kate, the other guy's wife left him, and he blamed her for everything and threatened to kill himself over the phone. She claims she hasn't spoken to him since telling him. She pulls out a piece of paper and starts listing the ways she plans to make things right with me. She offered all of these services on the first day, including couples therapy and sexual requests, and then she surprised me by saying, "I don't want to continue living this way." She said she wants us to both quit our jobs, go overseas, and open the small beach bar we've always talked about. She also said that if I went with her, she would leave right away. To put this into perspective, this is all that came to mind for the. I was reminded of how much I missed her and wanted to be with her when I heard her express the same desire. I knew I had to end the conversation at that point because her friends were waiting for her. When I escorted her back to her car last week, I told her that even though I couldn't guarantee anything more, I would be open to talking. I had assumed that everything would have to be restarted after the divorce, so I might as well add another element to the tremendous change I'm currently going through and just do what I want. I'm having a terrible time missing her. It's hard to talk to someone who was my best friend for decades. It's heartbreaking to realize that all of our hopes and dreams have been thrown away. All I want is to simply move and start over somewhere else. She destroyed it even though I wanted that to happen. She felt comfortable enough to leave on the phone, and ever since then, we've spoken on the phone every night, but nothing has changed. She sobs and begs for another chance. I therefore hope that the original poster is happy with his life and enjoying himself wherever he is as I wrap up this film, which has already been long enough. In addition, how many of you would like to see a beach bar like the one in the original poster? Well, that's all we have from Op. Hopefully, he was able to finish the divorce, move to a beach, and open his bar. At least we know that the affair partner received his just desserts and that he was able to confront his unfaithful wife. I'm aware it's one of my retirement fantasies, and I appreciate you watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and click the notification bell to receive updates on more startling real-life tales that are happening in your area.